I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Managing Editor of Canada's Entrepreneur, and joining me today is Dan Kelly, who is President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Thanks, Dan, for joining us today.
Happy to be with you, Mario.
Okay, we're going to talk about federal budget, which comes out, I think it's November 4th. Um, Now I know that a lot of groups prior to the budget are asked to submit their submission report to the government.
Yep.
What were the top recommendations that you folks made when you made your submission?
Look, lots, of course, has changed over the last number of months as we continue to see uncertainty pour through the economy. But the big thing we're asking for the federal government is to provide as much economic certainty as they possibly can, particularly on the tax fight. There are a few unfinished promises from the last budget that we are hoping to see cross the finish line in this one. An example of that, you and I have spoken about this before, is that there is one further installment to go for the carbon tax rebate for small business. Consumers had of course, we have all had that particular tax wrap up, and a credit to Carney for killing it finally. However, consumers got their final rebate checks, but businesses have not. There's a whole year of money that is to be sent back to businesses, about $630 million. And top of our list is to get that money dispersed back to businesses who could really use it very soon. Again, this is money that's already been collected. It's not new tax revenue to Ottawa. It's not going to increase or decrease deficits. This is money that has been collected and should be remitted back to businesses as per the promise. So we're hopeful that we'll see that in the budget. Secondly, we're also asking for the government to make good on the promise to increase the capital gains inclusion rate from 1 million to about 1.25 million. That's an extra 250,000 that businesses will be, upon sale, will be able to have tax free, and that is a good measure. CRA has already implemented it as if it were in place. However, the legislation has not passed, and we're urging the government to ensure that that is ratified in the budget. We've got a variety of other things. We're asking for reductions in the small business corporate tax rate, some relief from the tariff measures, and of course, longer term, a pathway to a balanced federal budget. We know that's not going to happen immediately, but at least lay out the roadmap to get there.
Hmm. Let's backtrack for a second on
Sure.
the rebate. I don't know if you folks have done the math, but what is a typical business in Canada uh, getting back if with the rebates?
Yeah, look, this one's going to be the past rebate was much more sizable because it was up to 5 years of rebate checks that would go back, and it does depend on the province. Those provinces with higher degree of resource revenues, so Alberta, Saskatchewan, Newfoundland and Labrador, businesses in those areas will get more, and those that have lighter degrees of resource revenue will get less. But I would say on average, a small business might get a check of $1,000 if you've got 10 employees. And of course, some of the checks are sizable if you have a larger headcount. It is based on the number of employees that you have and the province in which you are located. And it excludes BC and Quebec because they had a different system altogether. But for 8 provinces across Canada, these rebate checks will be coming out. I am hopeful that if they put this in the budget in November, that the money will actually be dispersed in December. My goal is to get the money out to businesses by the end of this year.
Hmm. Now, when you look at the budget itself overall, and we kind of chuckled when talked about a balanced budget, but how important is that to get for a federal government to get to a balanced budget?
It is. Look, it's not critical that it happened overnight, but I am very worried. I think almost everyone has concluded that this budget deficit is going to be much greater than was originally forecast. Now,
Hmm.
we may excuse some of that because the government has had to deal with the tariff threat for much longer, and there have been some measures that we've had to invest in to make that happen. Defense spending is one thing, but the size and scope of the federal civil service, federal program spending has ramped up so dramatically over the last 10 years that we are now on the hard slow to get it back down. And that's going to require a whole bunch of efforts. We've made some suggestions specifically to finance that the government could start by looking at eliminating some of the business subsidy programs that are out there. Now, the rebate check that I just spoke about is money that was promised back to businesses as a result of an extra tax that has now gone away. I view that very differently. But there's all sorts of subsidy programs that are out there where government taxes you at a high level and then sends you back a check if you tick a few boxes. Most of these programs are spectacularly unsuccessful. The digital adoption program of years in the past was a good example of that. It basically rewarded consultants. There are billions of dollars in business subsidies that are spent every year. And the federal government, if it's looking for some cost restraint, could look there first in order to get things going.
Hmm.
We think tax reductions, like reducing or perhaps even setting at zero the small business corporate tax rate, would be a far more effective way of providing small businesses with support than the subsidy programs that exist.
Okay. How would you describe the current climate out there for small businesses in the country?
Look, things have stabilized a tiny bit because I think people are getting used to the tariff scenario that we're in right now. But the big word that I hear from almost every business owner when I'm speaking to them, and it's evidenced in our survey data as well, is the worry over uncertainty. That nobody knows from day to day what is going to happen. Obviously, all of us have our lives sometimes upended by a tweet from a president south of us, and it is just getting hard for business owners to find a straight line. I've got members of CFIB who haven't had a normal month of sales in 5 years, starting with the pandemic and all the other either economic or
Yeah.
political uncertainties that have happened since then. Canada Post strike doesn't help. Like there's just a whole host of issues that have caused businesses to have to pivot. That's always the case for business. I don't ask for anybody to apologize for that. But governments need to do what they can to provide as much economic certainty and stability as possible. If we can get some of these tariff issues under control, the Canada-US relationship, and importantly, especially in Western Canada, the China tariff fight, if we can get some of those in the rearview mirror or at least settle down a little bit, that would sure help too.
Hmm. What are you getting in terms of a sense out there and talking to different people, talking to politicians of what kind of a budget this is going to be?
It is really hard to get a firm read of this. Is this going to be a budget of significant restraint, or is it going to be one where they hold the line in terms of overall spending? Making changes to the federal government, ramping down spending is hard to achieve overnight. And I think what's most important, and what I'm hoping we will see, is at least some longer term planning to reduce the size and scope of the federal government. I don't expect that they're going to be able to turn this on a dime, but I do expect that there is at least a pathway to get us out of these gigantic federal deficits that we have been facing over the last few years.
Mhm.
Um, we've been operating in deficit forever, and now the deficits. I think many economists and others are saying that the deficits are now so sizable that they have become unsustainable, and that should worry us all as Canadians because we've seen this movie before. That was what Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin had to clean up in years in the past, and we're headed for that. Some significant austerity may be needed. At the same time, Ottawa is making new commitments to spend money, some of it pretty important,
Mhm.
but like meeting our international defense commitments. So, in order to do all of this, they're going to have to be pretty judicious. I actually am encouraged because of the Canada Post example. For 10 years, the Trudeau government just kicked this can forward, never dealt with the sinkhole that was Canada Post. But the Carney government and the new minister have said, no, we've got to fix this, and here's a plan. Now we're not out of the woods yet, but at least they've started to put in place a plan, and I haven't seen that in a decade of liberal policies.
Okay, wonderful. Thanks so much, Dan, for joining us again today.
Anytime, Mario.
Okay, that was Dan Kelly, President and CEO of the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, Managing Editor of Canada's Entrepreneur. Thanks for joining us today.